Wow. Hey, how are you guys? You good? All right, all right. Here we
Happy
go.
holidays, folks.
Yeah, Hobby Hotline number 208 for those that are counting. New intro there. That was very loud in my ears. I don't know how it was for everybody else, but very, very loud. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning here in the United States and beyond. Links are in the chat if you want to join us. Rich, Brody, how you guys doing? All good?
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of nodding, no talking. You guys, this is a visual and an audio experience. So I know that I disappeared there for a little while, but I'm back. I don't know what happened to my Google Chrome, but my Google Chrome was not agreeing with me. So away we go. Brody, what do you have to say today? Anything in particular, or do you want to get to it before we get to Rich? What do you think? Anything in your mind?
I was at SmackDown in Chicago yesterday. Had a good time. A double taping, so two SmackDowns.
Okay.
Yeah,
So where was that at? Was that at Rosemont? Was that at the
yeah.
United Center? Okay, Rosemont, huh? Rich, what about you? You were not at SmackDown last night, I assume, and you certainly weren't at SmackDown this morning. Uh,
No, I was at services last night, and this morning I'm here and happy to talk about the hobby. And happy as the holiday season comes, and this is something fun to talk about tonight. My local card store and its family of stores is doing a Secret Santa. It's actually Secret Santa for a couple hours and then trade night for a couple hours. Trade night is going to be people with Pelican cases, and frankly, that's not for me. Secret Santa, and it was 3 buy-in points, and you could be higher. And I mean, honestly, you could have probably been a tad lower too. $50, $100, and $200. And basically, they sold a lot of unopened product and some packs and probably some other things that way, which is great. But I just did it because I love the concept of Secret Santa. Unbeknownst to me, they said to me, well, I don't know, I'll probably throw in one or two things. Well, one or two things was probably like 5 things per person.
wow.
So what they're throwing in is pretty impressive. And that's not why I did it. And so to me, anything I'm getting thrown in is an extra bonus.
Right.
But it's going to be just a fun exchange. I'm sure we'll open boxes and packs while we're there. I'm sure he'll bring in something like Chick-fil-A because it's next door,
Right, right,
which is always good. Always big fan of Chick-fil-A, the official iced tea of Hobby Hotline.
right. And
And
the content creators dinners, yes.
it's fun to just be with a hobbyist. And the person I drew is the person I was doing Secret Santa for. And they said, try to go over if you can. Well, I had no trouble.
Right.
The story is the person I drew is a person I know locally. And there was a Sunday afternoon where my friend Raymond Jones was up with me, and we were going, we always make one pass through all the donations to get rid of anything that's, let's say, adult oriented. We had a few of those pop up over the years into the donation.
Yeah.
And to frankly throw away cards that were not, bad condition cards. We didn't want people getting really bad condition cards. And I got this note, can you come over to my house? And I have a donation for you. So Raymond has a mini SUV, and we go over to his house pick up the donation for my synagogue show. Well, his mini SUV was so totally filled, I had 2 boxes in my lap on the way back.
Nice.
Yes. So when the person said, do you mind going over? I said, no, I don't mind going over. And he's given me 2 huge donations over the years. I'm all in favor of that. So I know who I have. And it was really, I said, that's a gimme. But I'm also thinking on their subject was what a great thing for their store in December. It made customers happy, but it generated business in what tends to be a tough month for a store.
Right.
With so many other things. So it's a win, like a win, 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 win.
Right.
And tonight I'll have fun. And I'll be with other hobbyists. And I think I told you, and I didn't tell Brody, is that, my wife and I, we usually go out to dinner Saturday night. And I said, well, you can come with me to this thing, and that qualifies as our night out, or we can go to dinner tomorrow night. I'll give you one thing. I'll give you one guess what option my wife took.
Chick-fil-A.
No, other than snowmen.
Gotcha.
We designed the house. We put snowmen out for the holidays and sell
Gotcha.
those.
Gotcha.
Other than that, no. So I'll give you one guess what option she took.
I failed that guess, I think, already.
Yeah.
So, hey, so let's say hi to some people. We have Logan Ward there, of course. Thank you, Logan. Antonio Padilla Aguirre is chiming in from Juarez, Mexico. Thank you, Antonio. Frank is here from wherever Frank resides. Mad City Brew. I'm not sure where Mad City is. Anybody know where Mad City is? Perhaps we can find that out together. But he or she is a big fan of Brody's short pack openings on the Twitter. Double D is in sunny Hawaii, and Chris Harris is here, popping in. Boy, a lot of Brody props
Yes, I
today.
do, Chris. Yes, I do.
There you go. Danny is from Baltimore. Hello, hun. Good morning, old and young. Zach and Porter here from Scottyville. Foul five ball. Chick-fil-A is overrated. I'm in the foul five ball camp. Everybody else in my family is addicted to Chick-fil-A. I actually despise Chick-fil-A for many reasons. Traffic patterns, reasons they're closed on Sundays, stuff like that. So I can deal without Chick-fil-A, truth be told. No offense to anybody out there. So Brody, want to talk to you a little bit here if we can before we get, well, we're going to get into it here. I don't know much about you because I'm an old man, and things move too fast for me. But when and where did you start in this whole hobby endeavor, and where are you at now? Don't give me your whole history, but like where'd you start with this whole thing here?
Well, I started collecting when I was kind of young with some wrestling cards mainly. Then I really got into it probably about 2016 and then early 2017. And it was fun. Enjoyed it a lot, collecting.
I
And
assume you got into it from watching on TV, right? First, was that your first, the whole wrestling thing?
yeah,
Right. Okay.
my family's a big wrestling family, so we started from there. My dad collected as a kid, so he wanted me to get into sports cards too. So yeah, I started there, um, and started working at the National some as Brody the Kid, and now I'm here in 2022 doing daily rips from an advent calendar.
So what are you collecting, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, you probably pretty much collect a lot of different things, but what's what do you wake up in the morning and you have a choice between what card you want to attack? What's your choice?
Probably anything baseball. I really like
Baseball.
baseball stuff.
Gotcha.
Even a lot of the Panini stuff that's been coming out lately, I enjoy. If there was like any box that's not like too expensive that I could get, it would definitely be the new Brooklyn collection that just came out. Cards look really cool.
Gotcha. Do you find yourself going back? Most of us would agree, and Rich is probably the same way. I'm not going to speak for Rich, but Rich is probably the same way in that our first love was baseball cards, and it'll always have a place in our heart. Do you go back and try to get vintage wrestling cards? Does that interest you at all, or not?
I haven't yet. Not much yet. I mean, maybe in the future, but I'm not sure.
I know a lot of folks, a lot of friends that I have or people that I associate with, a lot of them do look at that vintage stuff because that's when they started watching wrestling back in the 80s or whatnot. So be interesting to see what your journey is, whether you keep going back. And again, I'm not picking on you, but I'm curious. My curiosity is how you feel about, we're in the middle of an era, whatever the era will be referred to in the future. I'll let Rich talk this after I ask you, but we've lived through several eras and they're kind of defined now, right? Vintage and pre-war and junk wax. We didn't really call it the junk wax era back then, but what do you think about today? What do you think today is going to be called 10, 15 years from now? Do you think? Is it going to be, I'm not asking for a name, but you think this specific era will deserve a terminology that we use for other eras?
Well, I think this year, especially, was kind of like the end of the peak, maybe a little bit. And I'm not saying that the hobby's not strong.
Right.
It's still very strong, but I think we saw like all the Zion stuff with the crazy grading and everything. I mean, there's so much stuff we could go into. Last year and during COVID, it was crazy. I think, and that's when it hit its peak, and it's starting to go down a little bit now, but it's still got a long way to go, like really far down. If it's gonna be like a junk wax area, like this is still a really popular hobby, and I think it's gonna stay that way. And sorry for my voice. At SmackDown, I was screaming a lot, so my voice isn't great. Let's be honest.
Rich, anything you have to say
I
about
do
that?
have a question for Brody. Brody became famous in the hobby at a Tops gathering at the National for asking when Tops would hire him. Was that planned, or was that something you just came up? I've always wanted to ask you: is that planned, or is that something you just did at the spur of the moment?
We kind of just went with it right as we started. We saw this shine up sheet for the Q&A, and that was the year I only went for one day. And we saw it, and we're like, okay, well, this sounds fun. So we did it, and we just kind of came up with the idea right then and there. And yeah,
So it was sort of planned generically. I don't want to say generically, but like organically. Like, hey, I'm going to this. Let me ask them that. Like, I didn't even realize it would be. And did you realize? Did you realize what everything would lead to out of a simple question?
no, no, that is for sure. I had no idea. I thought it might just get a laugh or something, but not what I thought it would turn into.
You know what's funny is having you being fearless at either your age or whomever you're with. I assume it was your mom and dad, but being fearless because that room can be, from what I gather, can be rather intimidating. There's some heavy hitter collectors going in there, and you ask a
Yep, they're
question
still
like
the
that.
ones that complain about the 2017 Allen Ginter wooden mini.
Exactly, right. But how wonderful it is to be unencumbered by any kind of preconceived burdens and just say whatever you want to say, instead of having to worry about impressing or offending anybody else in that room. I think that's wonderful. We have obviously some comments about the current era, and we know it'll be defined as something. I'm not necessarily opposed to the junk slab era, but I think it's more broad than that. And you talk about junk wax, Brody, but one of the things about that is, the separation of base cards from parallels and hits and stuff like that. It's
Mhm.
essentially, it is junk wax, right? It's undesirables for the most part. Not too many people coming up in the hobby care about those base cards. I assume that you're the same way, and that's not an indictment on the way you collect. I'm just assuming that you're the same way, right? You don't have boxes and boxes full of uh, base cards, I guess.
I still have a lot of them, but yeah, I mean, I think when you open like something like Tops or Tops Chrome, you're looking for that gold in your Tops pack, number to 2022, or some parallels or autos and Tops Chrome. And yeah, I mean, there's so many slabs now, it's insane.
Rich and I grew up in an era where there was a term, all thrill and no fill, right? Because there's a lot of record albums that'll have one or two good songs and six or seven bad songs, and I think that that's kind of where we're at, Rich. We're looking at we're not looking at all thrill anymore. We're looking at a lot of fill,
Well,
right?
and I think and you're right, because in the '60s, especially in the '60s, you had a hit record,
Hmm.
you have a hit single, and then you have to make an album, and a lot of times it's just filler to finish the album. Sometimes the albums are really good in the '60s, and that's groups like the Beatles that started actually doing albums as albums instead of just songs to help
Right.
change all that. So then the albums became important.
We'll
Uh,
explain to you what albums are when Rich is done.
or see, today they call it CDs. Now we just download songs, so nobody knows what an album is anymore.
It's a
But in those
drop.
days, it was an album.
Yeah.
Then it became a CD, and I don't know what they call it now.
Yeah.
But it's Taylor Swift had 10 songs that as a unit, and they're all and they're all released the same day. So that's basically an album or a
Yeah.
CD, depending on what
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yeah,
But
and yeah, but it's a shame because there's now they have what on XM radio deep cuts and stuff like that, stuff that weren't hits and stuff, and there's a fondness for that, but I don't know if we're gonna have. You know what, Brody, I don't mind base cards. from this era. I love it because I don't care about the hits that much. But
And let me point out, there are some base cards that are really good. Upper Deck, their flagship hockey product, or their base hockey product, the Young Guns issued 1 in 4 packs. They're base cards,
okay,
and they're the most popular hockey cards out there. So you can still have popular base cards. It doesn't mean base card. Look at 2018. Look at
are they considered flagship though, Rich, or are they just base cards for that Young Gun set? I'm not familiar with.
that's a flagship product.
Okay.
Upper Deck. That's the Upper Deck hockey set. That's a flagship for them. Look, Topps Update. What 2018 when Acuna, Soto, all these guys. Those are base cards. Aaron Judge. A lot of his popular cards are base cards. There's still a world for base cards. And by the way, we're talking about base cards. We're talking about collecting. Our mutual friend, he's running a show today, Bo Spencer Thompson. He's running his 125 table show in Madison, Wisconsin today.
John Nolan Drive.
John Nolan Drive.
Right.
You've been to that show, I believe, John. Brody,
Not
you
yet.
need to get there at least once. It's only 2 hours or so from where you live, so you need to drive up there in better weather. If it fits into your schedule with all your basketball and baseball and all your other sports. But last Saturday, he had I'll call it the couch. We call the people who watch the show couch people. The Couch People holiday party. It is the most viewed YouTube video he's ever had. And it was just collectors. We weren't talking about the business. We weren't talking about money. There's a lot of collectings out there. So you saw, and we'll post it again, the link to the show. I'd love to hear collectors come in today and talk about, like we had Orlando talk a couple weeks ago about his vintage stuff. So this is a challenge to have not business related collectors call in, or collectors post about what they want to collect for 2023 and what they accomplished this year. This is fun. We want to talk, there's not a lot of pure hobby news right now. So let's try to have some fun for one of the last shows of the year.
I agree. And we're going to do a quiz here, an impromptu quiz. Brody, I gave you the answers already. You probably weren't paying attention. Be honest. This is not an open book test. How many of these? There's 8 wrestlers here. How many have you heard of?
7 of the 8.
You have? Which one have you not heard of?
Big John Studd.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty impressive. So you know your wrestling history. Now, this may disappoint you, but I'm going to bring this comment up on the air. Foul fly ball. I agree 100%. I refer to wrestling and wrestling cards as stuntman cards. There's no doubt that they're athletic, but it's it may or may not be considered entertainment by the authorities. Scripts are there, all that stuff. Let's see here. I like what Frank said. Frank said he votes for we can call this the flipping era, which is right. I mean, flipping to Rich and I used to mean something completely different.
Yeah.
It was a physical endeavor. And so, I'm still coming to terms with the term flipping, because to me it means
flipping. There you go.
Yep.
There's a card to flip.
Yeah. You know what flipping meant back then, Brody?
Nope.
So you have a stack of cards, right? And it's like Uno, I guess, right? So you have a stack of cards and you can go by teams or you can go by positions. And if you put down a pitcher, the next guy puts down an outfielder, next guy puts down a shortstop, and then you put down a shortstop, you get the whole stack. That stack is yours. So it can keep going. You can, like I said, you can do it by teams, you can do it by positions. That's how we did it. So you can end up with that's how you ended up with other people's cards. It truly was gambling, kind of like the flipping is today, but it truly
and then
was
you also
gambling.
took cards like this and you threw
That's
them.
pitching. Yeah, we call that pitching, Rich. Yeah.
Pitching. Okay, well, a lot of people in the hobby called it flipping, where you flipped the cards and you threw it against the wall, and if you had a leaner, you got to win like the whole stack of everything that was on the floor.
Yeah, if your card ended up leaning against the wall and not flat on the ground, and you get to pick up that whole stack. Now, think about it. You're probably cringing right now because that's how all our corners got dinged up and all that stuff. And flipping the way I flipped, that's how our cards got folded, all that crap. So that's why these cards, certain people like myself aren't as conditioned sensitive as other people because we used to beat the crap out of our cards. You guys or your contemporaries put them away in plastic cases and stuff like that. So it's fun to think about that. Philly Joe, guess where he's from? Live from that '70s wrestling show at the Philadelphia Arena. Let's go, Ernie the Cat Lad. I don't know who Ernie the Cat Lad is. Does that sound
Bernie the
familiar to you,
Cat
Rich?
Ladd was a football player, a really good AFL football player in the '60s who became a professional wrestler.
Did he really? That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
he
Huh?
played for the San Diego Chargers.
That's pretty.
He was
So,
really good.
Ziggy's got, I enjoy watching wrestling, like watching Transformers on Saturday AM, but I never think of wrestling as a sport. It's acting. There is no sport. Just never collected for that
Well,
reason.
actually, these people, to defend wrestlers, a lot of these wrestlers are really good athletes.
Oh, for sure. I don't think anybody doubts that. But the guys who on Yellowstone who ride the big ponies and wrangle up the cattle, they're pretty good athletes too.
Yes.
But they're doing the same thing. The people that do all the stunts for Stallone and Schwarzenegger are great athletes. But it's not competition.
Things can still go wrong or go right
Yeah.
when you do wrestling, and they have codes. Like, I think this is a code they do in wrestling thing. This is a real thing. We got to fix, somebody's really hurt.
Right.
They actually have, even though it's scripted, they make sure that they know if something happens, how they can switch the script immediately.
Yeah. I mean, it is, if you look at it, it's like playing a song, right? And, you have a couple people in that ring and the stakes are a little higher for a physical than playing a song, but it's like a band. You just can't go up on stage and play a song. You're going to have 4 or 5 guys doing different things. So it is impressive how they do follow their choreography. But I'll tell you, I have a people may know this, but I may or may not know this. I know some of you do, but I worked for WWF back in the '90s, and this was not improvisational. Obviously, we knew what the outcomes were going to be, but they also knew what they were going to do, and they practiced it backstage and all that stuff. So again, I'm impressed with the physicality, but you guys that buy into the whole thing, I really good for you, because it's not something that I.
One of my favorite wrestling stories was that the WWF had set up this whole thing about Hacksaw in the '80s, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik becoming mortal enemies.
Yeah.
Do you know where I'm going with this, John?
What's that?
Do you know where I'm going with this?
I'm just thinking it has a Cold War connotation, maybe.
It did. That was the whole point.
Yeah. Because
they got pulled over driving from like New York to Philly on the New Jersey Turnpike, smoking. They were in the same car sharing a marijuana cigarette. Guess how long that feud lasted after that?
How long, Rich?
Like, it was done immediately. They immediately said, WWE said, we're not going to have that one anymore.
All right. So mystery's been solved. Mad City Brew lives in Madison. So I was not able to see the signs and know their meaning, but now I know that Mad City is Madison. So pretty impressive that it took that long to explain that to me. Rich, I got a question for you now. All right, in the collecting vein, your credentials are unparalleled and unquestioned, and you've pretty much done it all in this hobby. The question I have for you is, what was your tipping point? When did you actually stop collecting? Because many of us know you for what you do now, what you did at Beckett. You were a dealer, you were a collector, but you were a hardcore collector. When and why did you reach that fork in the road?
Simplest reason, when I became a full-time dealer in the mid and late 80s, it was a simple rule. If you're going to be a full-time dealer, you can't be a collector.
I agree with that.
Really simple rule. I mean, if you're depending on it for your income, it doesn't. What I did, though, to make sure I kept collecting something, I collected autographed books.
Right. Well, that's you pared it down and narrowed it down to.
I narrowed it down,
kind of like Bo does, right?
I stopped building collecting cards, because if you're going to be in a business, you have to be in the business.
Right.
If you you can be a collector and a dealer. If our mutual friend Mike Summer, who has called in on occasion, he has a job he has a store. He does some collecting and he does some dealing, and he uses a lot of his dealing to buy some things for his collection, which is fine because he has another income coming in. If you have some extra money, but if you're going to be full time in the business and you don't have a big bankroll behind you, or you don't, have something like that, or you don't have a job, if you're going to be full time, you better be a real dealer. And that was the tipping point. It's
Right.
pretty simple. It's a pretty simple answer.
So you got rid of everything. You didn't
Well, I
decide
used it
to
for my inventory.
pause.
So getting rid is
Yeah.
the wrong. Eventually, everything got rid of. Yes, but
Right.
that's
How
the
did
wrong.
it? What was the last thing? What was the last thing from your hardcore collecting days to go out the door? And I'm
I
not
think the
saying you
last
haven't
thing from
kept
my
with,
hardcore collecting days is when I sold my inventory when I got married in 2005 to help pay for my wedding. There was still some stuff probably left from those days.
but that had your old sets that you collected
That
and
had
stuff
my
like
old
that.
sets and stuff in it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So 2005 is when all that finally left.
Did you have a good cry? I would have had a good cry when that happened.
Honestly, I paid for my wedding. It really wasn't. It really wasn't a cry. In fact, I had lunch a couple weeks ago. One of my former Beckett teammates, who's now at Upper Deck, came in, and a bunch of us had lunch. And he goes, "Every few years, you just like to turn over your old inventory." I said, "Yeah, it's actually kind of fun." So actually, once you've done it once, and once I sold the first card from my collection, which was a '67 Topps Tom Seaver rookie card. That's a card I probably should have held for a much longer time.
Right.
But once I sold the first one, I was like, okay, I can't turn back at this point.
So, Brody, are you? I unfortunately have a maybe some people would call me clingy, but when I get my cards, I have an emotional attachment once I process them and put in my collection. Do you have a lot of turnover with your collection?
No.
You're a hoarder. You're a junior hoarder, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
How many cards do you think you have estimated?
I don't know, because I've only sold about 3 of them.
Well, there you go. Okay, that sound a lot like me, man. And what is your main focus? I don't like to use the term PC because they're all PCs, but what are you looking for? Is it White Sox stuff? Is it
Some sock stuff. I like collecting quarterbacks for football. Basketball is kind of anybody. Wrestling, I just collect the guys I like.
now any kind of quarterbacks or historical quarterbacks? Because obviously in football seems to be, well, it doesn't seem to be. Football is quarterback centric now. Back in the day, Rich and I will tell you that probably the best football card is the Jim Brown rookie, or the Walter Payton rookie. And
I like the Walter Payton rookie a lot.
Okay, because right now the modern way is collecting QBs, and there's no, it's tough because the running backs don't last that long, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But
I like a lot of the more running quarterbacks, like Lamar, Kyler, Fields. Oh, and he's a Bear, so
yeah, true. Who do the Bears have on Sunday? I asked this question a lot this week.
They're playing the Eagles, so good luck to them.
Good luck. Trap game, maybe. I don't know. That's what people like to say. Let me see here. We're going to bring up, speaking of football, Steelers 70 says this era has to end with a crash as people exit when prices go down. The only collectors are left to discuss. I see a lot of stuff. It makes you wonder where this money goes. I know, the stock market, people buy high sometimes and sell at a loss. But man, I see the numbers of these single cards being sold for $500,000-$600,000, and then a year later being sold for $100,000. Where's this money going? Do you think, Rich? I mean,
I think high-end cards will always be fine to some extent, and I think the high-end vintage cards will hold value much better than some of the modern,
right?
Produced, I don't want to say fake scarcity, fake rarity, but produced rarity cards. Where the cards that are really tough will survive better, will be a much better, investment. But in reality, I don't think there'll be a major crash in dollar cards, $2 cards, $5 cards. I work for a company. I work for ComC. Mm-hmm. When Tim Getz, co-founder of the company, founded the card, he founded it during the recession. I don't want to say it's a recession-proof company, but it's a recession resistant company. It'll
Right.
just be that people will spend a little less for some of the cards,
That's a
but they'll
good
still be
point.
collectors. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not worried about people collecting cards. Will it be some of the same frenzy? No. March 2021 is done. We're not
Right.
going back to March and May 2021.
Right.
Where people are throwing money at you. But if you still have cards at good prices, Dallas Card Show's doing just fine. It's
Yeah.
still drawing good crowds. Dallas Card Show's doing just fine.
It's important not to gauge the health of the hobby, and I say hobby with an H, on what the 9.5 mantle does, or these six figure cards, because those are true outliers, right? So you got to make sure that we don't. I see enough of stuff of these things on Facebook and Twitter. People saying the hobby's doing great, and Mickey Mantle just sold for 12 million. Well, as I've said in the past, when the housing crisis happened, people were still buying $20 million mansions.
Mhm.
If somebody can afford a $20 million mansion, they can afford it. Regardless of the economic climate. So you can't tie any of that into there. And I don't know, your thinking or your generational thinking might be different than mine, Brody. But it seems to me like you're on a path. You're kind of on the right path. You have a relationship with your cards, and you appreciate what they represent and all that stuff. They don't represent liquidity or currency or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. I mean, there's obviously a lot of teenagers though that have gotten kind of like sucked into that like flipping game and stuff. But I think for the most part, a lot of them aren't there at least yet, which is good.
Yeah, I mean it's a false. There's many things to draw parallels to outside of the hobby.
Hmm.
Stuff like whatever, what is it, board apes or whatever, and crypto and all that stuff. So it's needs to be some reality based thought behind all this stuff if you're in it. Old Cooter Lev from Mokahoho says, in 2022, I collected a significant number of new hobby friends to share the hobby with. The hobby is much enjoyable when you share the experiences with and of others, even Keating. Cooter couldn't be more on the point there. I don't know how you have a lot of hobby friends, Brody. Like,
Yeah, I feel like it. Yeah.
I mean, just around you too, not just on the internet. So I know you've got quite a following on Twitter, but amongst your peers that you associate with or see day in or week in, week out, you have a lot of people in the hobby that you know.
Yeah. I like card shops. I'm really good friends with a lot of them. They've done a lot for me, and we do a lot for them. So
Right. That's good because what Cooter is inferring, and I could speak for him now because words are sometimes hard for both of us, but a lot of us collected in a vacuum. We started in an era obviously before the internet and stuff like that. So you assume that once you reach a certain age, you're the only one doing it because, nowadays people love cards, but it wasn't always the case. So for us old geezers, that's one of the fun parts is, collecting friends as well, and people that have a common interest. So it's pretty fun. Danny Black says 80s wrestling was so over the top fake. It was great. Do you ever watch any of that old stuff, Cody? 80s wrestling?
not really. Mm-mm.
No, you're smart. You're wise. Don't pollute your mind with that stuff. You're still growing. Chris Harris says it's still real to us. Damn it. So Chris Harris believes in wrestling, probably Santa Claus as well. Is
True
coming
wrestling
coming to
fans
Chris Harris.
believe it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Santa Claus too.
Yeah, Rich, you're not. That's not fair, Rich.
He'll be here in 1 week.
You're a plastic Christmas person. It's like they say that in England. If you're a plastic fan, if you just came on board with soccer in England, you're a plastic Christmas believer. That's not fair.
Well, Brody's also lucky when he talks about a store. If I remember, Brody is not that far from a really good store in the Chicago area.
Where's that, Brody? Because there's only one store in Chicago proper.
I don't know if it's in Chicago proper, but Jim and Steve's, if that's the one that I think he's mentioned, they have a lot of inventory and it's a really good store. Is my old fading memory correct, Mr. Brody?
It's a good story. Yeah, that was the one I went to start a lot. I don't go there as much anymore.
Where do you go to now?
There's a shop in Elgin, Illinois, called Top Shelf Sports Cards. And
Oh, I've heard of them. They're very good too.
I'm really good friends with Chris Keller, who's the owner. So I go there a lot.
Brody says selling is just as addicting as buying. Once you start, you can't stop. That's an interesting. You're absolutely right, Brody. I've been listing. I told myself Monday of this week I'd list 10 cards a day on eBay, and I'm doing that. They're all doubles, and in fact, I just listed 9 1992 Brett Favre cards, upper deck. So it is addicting, but you know, I want to. I like to keep my cards. Do you sell it all, Brody?
Not much. I keep a lot of my stuff.
You don't sell. You said you only sold a couple cards, right?
Yeah, I've
Rich,
traded some, but I haven't sold many.
Rich, I challenged a good friend of yours, and I'm wondering if he has spoken to you about this. What would it take to get Dr. Jim Beckett and Rich Klein behind a table at a show?
We've actually talked about this more than you realize, John.
Okay.
It would take a national, and it would also be something where I would tell Jim to bring some stuff, from the archives,
Right.
and to do it like, through maybe Thursday, and then, when the national evolves Friday through Sunday, then my stuff would come out because it would be more, then the high level collectors would have already decided what they've wanted to do. And then my stuff would be more generally populist based. So we've actually discussed this on more occasions. I don't want to say every week, but
right.
We've discussed this a few times. And Jim was never really liked being a hobby dealer.
Right.
He was good, but he never really liked it.
That was 40 plus years ago, though.
I enjoyed it, but then, if I'm behind the table the whole time, I think both of us enjoy, especially the national, walking around the room, seeing everything there is.
Right.
At a small show, like Danny asked me to talk about it, my Hadat Havarim Synagogue show, which is now a 19-table show, that's something you could probably just put stuff out on the table and just have a good time at.
Right.
And I want to use that to springboard and talk about a friend of mine who passed this week, Mark Anderson. Danny had asked me to talk about the synagogue show. Well, I have a pretty decent mailing list. And, I usually use it to promote CompC now at Kyle's shows or that I'm setting up. And that one of our first show in our new building was the week after Kyle's May show. It was Memorial Day weekend. So this time I did the headline as the return of the Adat Havarim show. And Mark either calls me or emails me. I don't remember which it is, and says, "You didn't tell me about this." I said, "Mark, read your email." It was in there. He had missed it.
Gotcha.
Other people had caught it. And I said, he goes, "Do you have tables for me?" I said, "Absolutely." Well, Mark had battled illness and other things for many years and finally passed on the other day. Way too young, probably around 50 years old. When he came to Texas to work for Beckett, he sat across from me. And he later became the manager and one of the guiders of Beckett Grading Service. And Mark did immeasurable good for the hobby. And Jim, myself, and another mutual teammates, my hobby son, Joe White, we taped a tribute. Jim will have to cut it down because we spent 45 minutes.
Right.
We really didn't do it as we did it more as a free flowing discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than one of our more formal sit down, get it done in 15 minutes. We just chatted.
Right.
And, Mark left us way too young, and he leaves a 9-year-old daughter behind. And it's a shame. And Mark was also truly a lifer. You and I are talking about things. Mark sold out his inventory in January, and he used that to pay off the mortgage of his house. And at the last Adat Havarim show, one of my friends, the great Raymond Jones, who I mentioned earlier, had like diamond quarter boxes. Mark had so much fun, he just bought out the diamond quarter boxes just to have fun. So Mark was a lifer.
Well, looking forward to his tribute that from you guys. That'll be fun. We'll get to know him a little bit better
Yes,
through
yes,
that.
very much so.
A lot of people are names in this hobby. A lot of people are, well known, but not known on a personal level. So it's good to hear those stories. For sure. Now, your foul five ball has no hobby friends. If that's by design, then more power to you. But if you need a hobby friend, there's plenty of us here. Just yap at us. We've got no problem adopting more hobby friends because just this today, I got two envelopes in the mail from really good hobby friends. It was very nice. Christmas greetings as well as some other stuff. So it's great having these friends. I love sending stuff to people that would otherwise sit on my shelf. So it's an aspect of the hobby that I certainly didn't expect back in the 1970s. So it's good to get some hobby friends. Go get some. Reach out
And
to one of us.
speaking of hobby friends, John, do you remember this?
Can't see it.
I'm trying.
Is that my fractional? Or your fractional? Yeah. See, that's what hobby friendship gets you is you can hold up the paper too. It's a legal document, Rich. If you just
Yes.
want to hold up briefly. It's the 1988 Greg Jeffries fractional. So that's what hobby friendship buys you. Stuff like that. Brody, I'm sorry you couldn't get in on the initial round. There may be a Chris Sabo or a Todd Zeal fractional in the future, so I'll make sure I'll keep you in mind for that. I had to take care of the people who were with me from the beginning first.
And I love having it signed by the Secretary of Defense as well.
Of course, Gary Maddox. What was he saying about him, Rich?
2/3 of the world is covered by water. The other third of the world is covered by Gary Maddox, who had the misfortune of being the center fielder with Greg Luzinski in left field. And until they got Bake McBride, people who really couldn't cover a lot of ground.
Jay Johnstone and stuff like that. Yeah. Great outfielder, Vietnam veteran, fought in the jungles of Vietnam, Gary Maddox. Love him dearly, and I appreciate his help launching these fractionals that seem to be so popular these days. We're not going to get into any of that stuff. We're not going to talk about this week's news with fake cards. We're going to talk about some other stuff. Brody, 2022. Let's talk about, you tell me about your 2022, your hits, your misses, either hobby-wise or what you thought about the industry. Just give us a quick recap of your 2022, if you don't mind.
Well, I think the industry is still going really strong, which was awesome to see. Was a little worried about it late last year, but seems like it's still going good. I've enjoyed still doing my stuff. The National was awesome. Got to see so many people. Seems like I met like double the people last National, so I hope that keeps going. That was awesome. Enjoyed doing my daily rips all year. Still, it's really fun. It's been a little bit harder with high school, a little bit more busy, but there he is, Chris Keller in the chat. What's up, Chris? CK over there. Yeah, I've had a ton of fun with CK with stuff too, so it was a good year.
Yeah, so it's important for you to understand, and forgive me for preaching at you or to you, but there's so many ups and downs through life, whether it's business, careers, all that stuff, and the hobby's no different. Rich has lived through all of them, and here we are. Rich is still going 62 years after he came out into the light. He's still going strong in the hobby, so that's important to remember. Ups, downs, lefts, rights. There was a time, ups and downs, right, Rich? And then there was a time where it was just horizontal for a very long time, I guess, in the 2000s and stuff like that, right?
Hobby was during the recession, a lot of people dropped out, the Great Recession, and it was a great time. I really enjoyed the 2010, 2011 period. I bought a lot of Topps cards because I really enjoyed buying, getting we'll call it the dig or whatever, or spinning the wheel to see if I could get a vintage card from the Topps.
Right.
And there was an active trading group on Facebook. It was a lot of fun. And, there were certain people who, would send you horrible offers, but there were some very fair offers too.
And nothing's changed, right?
Right. Just so nothing ever changes.
Right.
But I really enjoyed it. And I got like 30 cards the first year, and they were all like pre-1970, and with one exception, they were in pretty good condition, and it was a lot of fun getting those cards.
Right.
When the package finally came.
Right.
And I had pulled the Steven Strasburg free shipping card, so I didn't have to pay for shipping.
Right.
Which was a bonus. And the next year I pulled the really rare card. There was a card in 2011, and it was, I think, Mickey Mantle card 7 or something like that in the 60 cards.
Yep.
And I have the legitimate ring they sent out. And there's like only 60 of those rings that they officially issued at the time. And that's still sitting on a shelf somewhere at home.
Gotcha.
And Cooter last week, when we were talking about, he talked about stupid money. So he said, did you have any of the Beckett sample Dave Kingman 85 Topps cards that, there were 500 that we got that were used to really get, as like a test for how grading is going to work.
I'm still looking for them. They're expensive.
Grade the cards. How are you going to slab them? How are you going to put them in the, so there's about 500 of those out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Cooter asked me, it's going for selling money. Then he sent me the eBay link, and I go, I'll take half of that gladly.
Yeah. I mean, it's well into the four figures.
I showed it during our chat last week on Bo's Hobby Hotline, on Bo's Hobby Holiday Christmas Couch People Holiday Party.
85 Kingman, right? Is that what we're talking about?
85 Topps Kingman. It's like the first 500 cards. Beckett.
I think he was an A's. He was an A's player, maybe.
Yes, like he's an A's player.
Yeah. It's one of those hobby. It's a hobby. That's something that the hobby, one of those hobby little secrets, and there seem to be a lot of those for a while. There's an underground of that card that I'd like to get in on at someday. I know it sounds dumb. It's Dave Kingman, and it's an 85 Topps, but.
Right, and they don't grade very high either. It's not like
it doesn't matter.
10s and 9s. I mean, you're going to get 7s, maybe 8s.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, it's like that's how it was actually a good idea on how to get the Beckett grading, how to do all the processes of how to grade a card.
Trials and errors.
Yeah.
I got a question about Beckett here from Make Money Unlimited, which is an awesome hobby name. What was the primary factor to determine card value from the equation Beckett used for the magazine? If it was the amount of player contracts, the hobby needs to reconsider prices now.
Actually, player contracts had nothing to do with it. It was as much as possible based on actual market.
Right.
And understand some of the stuff in those days was guessing. I mean, who's going to really monitor 10-cent cards versus a 15-cent card?
Yep.
Because, in the overproduced era, it's a 10-cent card, it's a 15% card, it's a quarter card. But it's based as much as possible on, especially the higher the value was, what are the cards actually selling for? Right. What are they being offered for? Who is doing the offering? Is it somebody we can trust for knowing how they're grading, or is it somebody that you just look and you say, no, we're not even going to pay attention to what they do?
It's a lot harder to gather data back then as well.
Right. That's why we went to so many card shows in the early 90s.
And stores. Yep.
Yep. And I mean, depending on the show, sometimes you only went to the show. Sometimes you did shows in stores. If I was going to Chicago, I'd always go to AU Sports.
Right.
Where I was very good friends with Audrey and Eddie, both of who left us 20 years ago. And whenever possible, I always wanted to add a store component to the show trips.
Right.
Sometimes you couldn't. You go to the National. You couldn't. And to answer your question, kind of, sort of. We had a network of what we called regional correspondents. Some were shop owners, some were store dealers, and some were just really in tune collectors. And
truth be told,
our prices too.
Sorry to interrupt, Rich, but seriously, if you haven't listened to Dr. Jim's podcast from the beginning, he goes over this throughout the history of his podcast, which is absolutely brilliant. Sports Card Insights with Dr. James Beckett. there's a lot of that. He'll bring that up from time to time, and it's a pretty fascinating. For those of that who lived in that era, we kind of understand. Nowadays, it's all Terapeak comps, this, that, the other thing. It's easy to feel like there's a ton of data out there. Brody, you're exposed to a ton of data, but back then it was you had to go get it. It wasn't there was no aggregates. You went and go get. You had to go get the data. You had to go find the data, put it in the ground, and watch it grow. Right, took a while. Logan's telling us that there's PSA samples, slabs from back in the day. Here's another question. This is something I sometimes struggle with. Sexton's Kentucky cardboard. Why is Mantle's rookie considered to be the 52 tops, but Bay's rookie is the 51 Bowman when they both appear in both sets? Rich and I will both agree that I think nowadays it's common to consider both the 51 Mantle and the 51 Mays their rookie cards.
Yeah, they always were the rookie cards. It's
Yeah.
just that people wanted to call the 52 tops the rookie card because
Which
it's a really tough card.
But it's ironic in these days when we have so many thousands of rookie cards for a player. We still get there's. I will consider Mays or the 52 Mantle his tops rookie card. It's not his overall rookie card, but I've got no problems with that considering a player has 2,500 rookie cards now in a year. Even in the same set, they can have 3 or 4 rookie cards, if not more, right? So I'll never have a problem with calling the 52 Mantle his tops rookie, but I think nowadays 51, and Rich has more experience in this than I do, but I think the 51 Bowman is considered as true rookie, truth be told.
The word would be first tops card for both of them.
Right.
And that works very nicely. First card sometimes is better than calling something a first card is sometimes better than calling something a rookie card because it's really not a rookie card. This
guy just found a 1 of 1 57 Campanella tops card. Congratulations,
I love
Danny.
the 57 tops set. Even if
Yeah.
it's before I was born, it's other than 53 Bowman, my favorite set from the 50s.
Right. So here's one for you. The 52 Mays, that the 51 Bowman is considered as rookie. Sexton, 52 Mays tops rookie. Now, here's a question, and I know Rich knows the answer, but what's considered the all-time? Maybe I'll ask Brody this first. The all-time most expensive, consistently most expensive or most valuable tops rookie card. Do you know that answer, Brody?
I would think it would be the Mantle from 52.
True rookie card here, sir. Rich, what do you think?
I would think it would be Clemente then.
Nah, we're going to go with
I
Rich.
would think it's 52 tops Eddie Matthews card number 407, the last card in the 57 set nowadays.
That's the only correct answer, Brody. 52 Matthews, and people talk about a sleeper. People don't realize that's considered, and probably, I know the data backs it up as the most expensive tops rookie card. Last card in the series, right, Rich?
The last card in the series.
Last card in the series that wasn't distributed fully. So there's many factors there, but the Eddie Matthews card.
And we have a lot of people in the chat that agree with all that. So
it's pretty impressive.
A lot of smart people with the chat. We only have a few minutes left, but again, if you want to just talk about collecting, which is really what we've been doing, please call in.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap this up. 2023 is coming, Brody. What are you looking forward to in 2023 in your hobby life? You don't need to tell us about the full gory details of your private life. 2023 hobby, what are you looking forward to?
Just looking forward. Hopefully the hobby stays strong. Hopefully we can get the rest of the 2022 products out there because it seems like they're slowly coming. Slowly but surely.
It's crazy. They're dumping them right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of releases in December, and we're only about halfway through it, so we'll see. But I'm excited for it. Excited for the National. My backyard, basically.
Home game, right?
Yeah.
Do we know if did they release the baseball schedule yet? I think that they're doing that very soon or imminently. Are they not, the 2023 baseball schedule? We need to find out what that lines up with the National. That'd be fun, huh? To see a bunch of baseball doobers out there in the either.
Yeah, but everybody goes to the Cubs game, and I don't want to go to the Cubs game.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we know what the name.
John, the schedule for 2023 is out, by the way.
Somebody's got to go figure out what we're going to do. We're going to a Cubs game or a White Sox game. that week,
White
right?
Sox.
I love the not new stadium. I love what they've done to that stadium there. I don't know what it's called. Where do the White Sox play?
Rate.
What is it?
Guaranteed rate.
Yeah, whatever. New
Finest
Comiskey is what I'll call it. But they've done a lot to.
John and I, we call it Comiskey Park.
Yeah, I call it the New Comiskey, and they've really done quite a bit to spruce that thing up. I went to a game there, 2021, I think, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a fun place to go to a game. It was a new ballpark that looked old now, so it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody here, battery. I'm still trying to get to 52 Matthews for my Braves set. He would have been a Boston Brave, Rich?
He was a Boston Brave. He's the
Okay.
only player to ever play for the Boston, Milwaukee, and Atlanta Braves.
Right. Gotcha. Rich, 2023 is coming. Tell us your crystal ball.
Well, I booked my hotel room for the National.
Good.
So that's encouraging.
Where are you staying, if you don't mind me asking?
Unfortunately, so many corporates and so many people have taken all the hotels near the show. I'm near the show, but it's a little funky how to get to the National, but that's okay.
Okay.
They said we have free shuttles for 3 miles, so I'm going to be using that.
Sweet.
So I'm looking forward to the National, and I'm very blessed. This office is literally across the street from the Dallas Card Show.
Right.
And it's a couple hundred feet away at the most.
Right.
I'll park my car here and walk to the office for the Dallas Card Show.
Because the Dallas Card Show does charge parking now, folks.
Yes, but it's only $5 a day. That's actually not that bad. But I still it's a good walk. It's uphill, so it gets the juices going in the morning.
Okay.
And I'm so blessed that I don't have to do a lot of things, chase down a lot of stuff, because I see a lot of cards in person.
Right.
And we will continue at the Dallas Card Show, setting up for as long as we can, for ComC, which is really good. It gives me a chance to meet people. And I'll continue to slowly build my inventory, which I sold out in January. And I have stuff for you. I do have stuff for you when you come down.
Give me the junk.
It's one man's junk is another person's treasure.
Any Baja 100 cards in there?
No, I don't have any of that stuff.
I don't know how I do either, Rich. They'll be on eBay, maybe.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Motorcycle cards.
I'm looking forward to 2023. I look forward to every year.
Great, man. That's awesome.
But as I said, we like where we are at the Dallas Card Show. We have a very nice table in the Starlight Room. It's a nice location.
Yep.
Carpeting on the floor, which for people like me with arthritis is very important.
And it's easy on the ears too, because the other room's pretty loud. So
I like that. I like that room better than the main room. They can find us there.
Well, I appreciate you guys joining me here Saturday. Holidays are coming up. I wish you guys the safest and happiest of holidays. Get what you want. Happy Hanukkah to you, Rich, and your loved ones. And I only get to celebrate 2 days of Hanukkah because I'm only 28% Jewish. So the rest of you guys enjoy your full Hanukkah. Brody, great Christmas to you. Happy New Year. Be safe. All our listeners, same to you guys and gals. Appreciate it. Hobby safely, which is better than saying hobby how you want, because if you drive how you want, then that's how we end up with collisions all over the highway. So just hobby safely and all that fun stuff. Any last words?
Having had a car totaled while I was sitting at a traffic light, was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, I have a son who's totaled 2 cars in 3 years. So let's all be safe out there, everybody. Brody, when do you start driving? Have you started this?
I had somebody with a pickup truck decided to try to make a turn while a lawnmower truck was driving through an intersection.
Right.
And hit that lawnmower truck with enough force. I had nowhere I could have gone anyway.
Right.
Where it spun into the front of my car and deployed the airbag.
So you swapped paint with somebody, and
I really swapped paint. The car was actually not in that bad of a shape, other than the fact that the airbag went off.
Did you get out and swing your helmet at the other driver like they do on the NASCAR?
Yes, I was definitely in a Tony Stewart type of movie.
All right. Well, hopefully your fire suit, you didn't split a seam in your fire suit
The funniest thing is my wonderful dog Tater Tot, which normally sits in my lap anytime we go anywhere, was instead of him sitting in my lap where he might have gotten crushed, he was sitting in the passenger seat very calmly. He just was like the calmest person the whole time. We're just,
Gotcha.
having conversations. They're police officers.
Right.
Tater Tot is like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah.
And he was going to the vet that day to have a tooth removed, ended up 7 teeth removed.
Right.
He was the calmest person the whole time. He didn't even bark once.
Well, that's Brody. Just be careful driving. All right. I know you guys have gadgets, and you guys.
Brody, you're a few years away from driving.
Yeah, just be careful out there.
Happy that you're not driving yet.
Put your phone down. It can wait. All that fun stuff. So, and don't tow a lawnmower behind you while you're driving, especially when you're learning.
All right, then. But thanks for hosting, John. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, guys, gals. What's that, buddy?
See you in 2023.
All right, folks.
Chris Harris, I'd say keep on rocking in the free world.
Keep on rocking. It's better to burn out than to fade away. And here we go into our outro. Thank you. Goodbye.